Okay, I never found a video on a Crosman 140 or 1400, so I thought I'd make a quick one. Just some stuff I found through trial and error and research on the internet. How to tear one of these apart and put it back together. Anybody with a little bit of mechanical ability should be able to handle it just fine. This is the early version. This has the trigger mounted in the stock. Now, this is very similar to the later 140s and the 1400s like this one. You'll have one with this die-cast trigger guard with the safety in here instead of through the stock. Both the same, virtually the same gun inside other than the trigger pack, which doesn't affect the rebuild. Okay, so you're going to have a knob or a hex nut right here on the bottom of your stock. You want to remove that. Pull the stock off. Now your gun, if it's stock, will have a roll pin through the pivot point for the pump arm. I have a one I turned down out of brass here. It makes it a lot easier to remove. And we pull off the front sight and slide your pump rod out of there. You should feel a little suction if that seal's good on there. Now these seals are not real easy to replace. There's a brass collar on them that has to be pressed off with a special tool. I actually machine a new piston and put a groove in for an O-ring when I replace these. Okay, now to take the barrel off, you've got a screw in your slide cover. Your slide may have a bolt on the later 1400s, or you may have a spoon handle, or you may just have this slide cover. This little screw right here comes out. That'll release your slide. Now I've put a hex screw in here, but this should be the stock, it would be a slotted screw. You're going to take that screw out. I have a lock washer, a little tiny lock washer in mine, but more than likely this is the big tough spot that stumps a lot of people the first time on these. There will be a plastic washer mushed down in there from being tightened on, and that will prevent you from sliding this rear plug out. So take a little screwdriver, get down in there, you'll find a smushed plastic washer. Get that out of there. Then you'll be able to bring this rear plug out, which slides right out. Slide your bolt back a little bit. The breech screw. Unscrew that. Make sure you don't lose it when you move your barrel around. Okay, we've got our barrel removed. Now your transfer port seal will be all smushed up too, probably. I use a piece of 1/4 inch refrigerator ice maker tubing and just cut it to the appropriate length so it sticks up just enough there to make a tight fit on your barrel. Okay, we're down to the basics here. To remove this bolt, please try not to use pliers on it because it makes it ugly. If you have a drill with a chuck on it, try chucking your drill chuck on there, tighten it real tight, and you should be able to remove that bolt that way without damaging it. Once it's off, I file flats on them so I can use a crescent wrench to remove that bolt. This bolt screws into the valve, which holds it in place. Okay, now this rear pin is this is where your top screw went in, that from the top through the breech. That's a threaded pin with the blind hole in it. So you don't want to booger up those threads. Make sure you have a small enough punch that it gives you plenty of clearance on the threads. And tap that pin out the bottom. Whoop, and there's a little spring pressure on one that's been apart a few times. There's that pin. It's knurled on one end, so you can only put it in one way. And you're going to remove this tube plug, the spring, And if we tip this up, you might have to get in there and fish them out. This one's been apart a few times, so it's coming out nice and easy. And you're going to get this piece. Now on this gun, you may find some little differences as you go in different models. This one has a beveled edge on it, which goes towards the rear block. Then there's this little sear block stop with the pin in it. And this has a threaded hole that goes towards the muzzle of the gun, the front of the gun. So you might want to lay those all out in order so you don't forget the order, because it can get confusing the first couple times. Okay, we've got everything out of the back of the gun. I would recommend a wooden dowel, but today what I have handy here is a threaded rod with a couple nuts on the end. We're going to come in from the rear of the tube and push the valve out the front of the tube. Okay, our valve comes out. Now, you may find an aluminum valve, you may find a brass. If you're lucky, a brass valve I think is a better valve. What you have here on these guns is a pop-off valve. These are self-cockers. So there's a little pop-off valve in here. And that, when you're, what your trigger does is hold the pressure against this pin. That breech block is up against that pin, holding pressure against it so it holds the air in the valve. When you pull the trigger, it allows this hammer, which is against that pin, to come back, let the air out, and then the spring forces it back forward and recocks you. That's the basics of how that works. Okay, now to reseal this, which is why you're probably taking your gun apart, go on eBay or somewhere and you can buy a set of seals. You're going to get this outer poppet valve seal. Inside this poppet valve is the most important and different seal. It's called a quad ring, and there is a metal lip out around the edge here, and you have to get in there with a little tiny screwdriver or pick and pull out your old seal. It may be hard and cracked and dried out, but you want to get that all out. Blow it out, make sure it's clean. When you get it all out, take your new quad ring and start pushing it in slowly, a little bit by hand first, and then maybe use a toothpick. Make sure you get it in there. Use a magnifying glass if you have to. Make sure you've got that quad ring. It's a square ring. Make sure it's in there flush all the way around, that there's no edges. The edges like to catch on the lip, so they're not pushed into the groove all the way. Double check that. Make sure you get it right. Okay. You also have an outer O-ring that seals against the tube, and you have an O-ring on the body halves here. There's a spring in there, and then inside, if you're lucky, you'll have a nice Teflon seal. This one does not. This has the old aluminum seal with an O-ring on it. So I put a new O-ring on there. I'm still having trouble with this one sealing, so some other work may need to be done, but this is good enough to show you how to do it. So you put your O-rings on, you slide that little seal back in. You've got your spring, the second half of the back half of the valve body. You'll want to try not to booger these up. You'll need a pair of pliers to tighten them or loosen them. It's soft metal. Just a little bit of tension to snug them up is all you need.